Do you want to multiply your money, increase your influence, and accelerate your success? If so, you must monitor the metrics, baby. Know your numbers and let the undeniable data determine your decisions. Because if you don't, I guarantee you are leaving piles of money on the table, stepping over your biggest opportunities, and floundering in a pit of problems that are totally unavoidable. Today, we're talking about the business of business part 2 and why monitoring the metrics matters.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Kingdom Builders Academy podcast. We're excited to jump into part 2. It wasn't planned to be a two-parter. We weren't ready for a two-parter, but when I had like 15 metrics written down that I thought I was going to get into in one 30-minute episode, and I basically took 15 minutes on the first one, I decided we're going to need to do a part 2, and we'll see how we do today. But it was a popular episode getting into the business of business and the numbers you need to know and what to track and what to do about it. So let's jump back in. Coach Tam, do you want to kick us off on what comes to mind for you as we dive into this part 2 episode?
Well, I was thinking about all the numbers in the Bible. For instance, did you know that Noah's Ark was 440 feet long, 72 feet high, and 43 feet wide? And that 7 pairs of clean animals were brought onto the ark. Did you know that Moses was 40 years old when he was exiled from Egypt? He returned when he was 40 years later, when he was 80, to lead the Hebrews out of captivity. He spent 40 days on top of Mount Sinai and 40 years with the Hebrews wandering in the desert. Did you know that 12 generations separated the exodus of Egypt from the construction of the Temple of Solomon? You know why I know that? It's because it's in the Bible. It's because numbers matter to God. We know that Jesus suffered on the cross for 6 hours, and in the 6th hour, the world was turned dark. Did you know that there are 55 sevens in the book of Revelation and 5 sevenths in the book of Revelation? We know this because numbers matter to God, and all numbers mean something. How much more so in business? Like God, we have to do business by the numbers. And so Zachary is really, we talked about it last episode, that Zachary is really a numbers guy who can do words. I'm really a words gal who can do numbers. But as Zachary said, he has all these metrics today. So I want to jump right into it, Zach, and pass the mic off to you so that you have time to get through, what did you say, 15 different metrics?
Let me see. I had 4 in core business metrics, 5 in marketing metrics, and 4 in client experience metrics. So that's 13. It's the number of the number of metrics I have. And last time I spent a lot of time on profit and profit margin. I'm going to jump into marketing metrics, and then maybe we'll get into some more client experience metrics. But love that setup, Coach Tam. I mean, it is so interesting, and I think you're not alone. A lot of our Bible readers in the house, you wonder, like, what do these numbers mean? Like, even when Jesus pulled up the fish, and at the end of John, and it was like, what was it, 153 fish, right? Like, there's some significance to that. I know Jerome, a couple centuries later, said that, like, that was the number of known species of fish, was like 153 fish. And he was like demonstrating that, like, of every like and kind are going to be counted worthy and come to the Father. So yeah, so interesting, the numbers discussion. And I think that's a great setup for as we jump into business numbers. There's a saying that you can't manage what you can't measure. You can't manage what you don't measure. And if you don't know your numbers, it's hard to make decisions. A lot of us have a strong sense of intuition. We really rely on our gut. We really rely on hearing from the Holy Spirit, and that's fantastic. There's also room, though, to be diligent in your knowledge of what's actually going on in your business, and to be really intentional and strategic in your decision-making process. And numbers are going to help. Numbers are going to help. Having some like real concrete numbers are absolutely going to help. And for our marketers in the house who many are new marketers, people who wouldn't have considered them marketers in the past. Maybe you would have considered yourself an author or a speaker or a leader or an influencer. In order to, get more people listening to you and impacting more lives and advancing your mission and having the resources to do all the things that are in your heart to do, you would be wise to develop the skill of being a good marketer. And part of being a good marketer is knowing the marketing metrics. Like, what even are the numbers I should be looking at? So I want to kind of actually reverse engineer a few things. Starting with one of the most important numbers, which is lifetime value. Okay, LTV. And just tell me in the chat here for our live students that are with us, yes or no if you're familiar with LTV. If I would have told you what is LTV, give me a yes or a no if you would have known what that is. So I'm glad we're jumping into this. It's maybe 50-50, maybe 60-40 on the nose, but maybe 50-50. So LTV is lifetime value of a customer. So when you get a new client, when you get a new customer, and this is true for coaching businesses, this is true for authors selling books, this is true for Amazon and Apple and every business, that when you get a new customer, they might have only bought a $20 book. They might have only bought a $10 product, or maybe they bought a $1,000 product. But if you learn your business better and you get to know your numbers better, you're going to actually be able to discern and decipher and calculate that $1,000 customer is actually worth $10,000 over the course of their lifetime in my business, being a client and going through the different things I have in my business. That, $10 Amazon customer that bought toothpaste for the first time, that might be worth $40,000 to them, right? That first step into your business is going to open the door to a whole lifetime of a client experience. Now, some people might buy once and never again, but if you do a good job, most people will buy again and again and again. And that $1,000 customer, so all of us who are, launching our, $1,000 coaching program, like $1,000 90-day group coaching program, right? Like, that's such a great offer that, so many of us have gotten started with. Your lifetime value should not just be $1,000, right? Your lifetime value of that $1,000 customer, I'd love to see it be $5,000 to $10,000, so that every time you get a $1,000 customer, we know that, like, hey, they're going to buy the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And by the end of their 2, 3, 5, 10-year client journey with you, on average, every customer is not worth $1,000, but is worth maybe $4,000 or $5,000. And when you figure that out, and when you design a client experience that lends itself to creating a high lifetime value, it actually gives you a lot of confidence and margin to go out and acquire customers, right? Like,
I say too, Zach, that another thing it'll do for you is it will motivate you in the journey. Because if you do not recognize that this customer has a lifetime value, that they're not just a one-off, it's easy to do a launch, and I've seen it happen lots and lots of times with people who are new in this arena, that they do a successful launch and they get a dozen, 2 dozen clients, and they do the fulfillment. And now it's like, oh, well, I've got to get new clients again. And maybe they do it again. Maybe they do it 2 or 3 times. But before they even figure out their metrics, before they even know how they can play around with prices, how they can massage their offer, how they can make it better, what they can put in, what they can take out, they get discouraged and they'll say, oh, I'm just going to do something else. They will never know the lifetime value of their customer, and they will take themselves out of the game. So knowing these kinds of metrics are not just about sort of, projecting in the future, but it's your longevity, it's your future, and how many more people you can impact.
Yeah, absolutely. And, so that's maybe a topic for another day is how to increase your LTV, how to design a client journey that every $100 customer is actually worth $5,000 and every $1,000 customer is actually worth $10,000 because we've designed our client journey. So maybe we'll do a future episode on increasing your LTV. But I want to we're just talking about the numbers you need to know and what those numbers should look like. So LTV, is maybe kind of at the top of like, hey, that is what a customer is worth. Maybe I've got this $1,000 offer, this $5,000 offer, this $10,000 offer. And every time I get a new customer, on average, at the end of the day, they're going to be worth X. And we want to know what that X is, because the next metric I want to get into is cost per acquisition. Okay, so cost per acquisition is the cost to acquire a client. So if you're running ads and you spend $10,000 and you get 10 clients, that means that your cost per acquisition is $1,000. You paid $1,000 to get a client. Now, if we know our LTV is $5,000, that's great. Even if we spent $10,000 and we made $10,000 sales, it might sound like we broke even. But hey, if we know that our LTV is actually $5,000, each of those $1,000 clients are going to be worth $5,000. So 10 $5,000 clients is $50,000. We actually spent $10K to make $50K. So those are actually what I think are the two most important numbers as it relates to marketing metrics, is what is your LTV and what is your CPA, your cost per acquisition. And if we can know those numbers and like be correct in our calculation of what those numbers are, that allows us to make good decisions, right? Because again, we can run an advertising campaign. And if we can, it's really easy to figure out our cost per acquisition. It's just, how much did we spend on ads and how many clients did we get? And we divide that and we get our cost per acquisition. And if we know our LTV, we can see like, okay, my cost per acquisition is $1,000. My LTV, my lifetime value of a client, is $5,000. This is a profitable ads campaign. I just, made 5X on my money. And for those running ads, I would say that's kind of the number you want to hit. You kind of want to hit 5X return on ad spend. I won't even get into, that's another one, ROAS, return on ad spend. I won't even get into that one today. But, if we're looking at that, we really want to look at like a 5X, because we're going to have costs. Maybe we're paying for a physical product. Maybe we're paying for coaches or services or outsourcing stuff or, admin or fees or licenses, right? Like there's costs, there's some costs. So we want to make sure that we are absolutely like, 3X minimum to ideally like 5X, clearing the bar on what our cost per acquisition to LTV is. Is that making sense so far? I know, we're getting into some real technical stuff, but let me see from you guys in the chat so I can just see if we're tracking here. Okay, yeah. So we're making sense. So those are kind of like, that's like, to me, that's like the meat and potatoes. Like I'm going to get into like maybe cost per booked call, close rate, cost per lead, and some of the other metrics we can track on a lower level, but super high level. If we can just get those two numbers figured out, what is our LTV? What is our lifetime value of a client? And what is our cost per acquisition? Like that's kind of all we need to know, right? If everything's working, now we can definitely reverse engineer things a little bit further and get some more information to continue to make better decisions on an even more granular level. But if we know that our LTV is 5 times what our cost per acquisition is, we're in business, and whatever we're doing, we just need to do more of it, right? We just need to spend more. So if that means, spending money to sell your books or spending money to speak on stages or spending money on Facebook ads or YouTube ads or, partnerships and affiliates, right? Like whatever the cost is that we're paying to acquire a client, if we see that our cost is $1,000 and our LTV is $5,000 or our cost is $200, cost per acquisition is $200 to get a new client, and our lifetime value of the client is $1,000. Hey, we're in business. We're in pretty good shape there. So, Coach Tam, let me pass it off to you to jump into anything else before I go any deeper on some more marketing metrics.
Yeah, I think just because of the way our brains work, and especially for people who are not really strong on numbers, and a lot of communicators, quite honestly, they're like me, that they're more given to words than they are to numbers. But it's important to stretch ourselves so that we have a capacity for this. It's going to help you so much in the business of your business, right? So I want to talk about something now. These are metrics too, but it's a little bit different. It's using a little bit different part of your brain. But I want to talk to you a little bit about pricing your product. So we have a formula for our students that works. It's undeniable, proven process for our students that we help them to package up and promote their very first, for most of them, their very first high ticket offer. And we say, this is what you're going to offer in your niche We're going to help you put a beautiful title on it, an irresistible offer. This is the way that we recommend that you price it. This is how you sell it when you talk about it, and it works. And we've got thousands of testimonials to prove it. But once you get past that initial launch, there's so many fun things that you can do to play around with your pricing and with your offer. And I want to just very quickly go through a couple of them. So price anchoring is one of them. And you'll see me do this very often in my webinars where I will say, now, here's what's included in the offer. And if you were to just go out and buy it, and a lot of times I will substantiate that, I'll say, this is the person that I recommend who has a copywriting class that is amazing. Now, this is included in our package. We're going to give you a whole copywriting course that is second to none. But this is what it would usually cost just for the copywriting course. Now, that's price anchoring. So another way of saying this, for instance, a jeweler might first present an engagement ring that's worth $18,000, and that's the price anchor. And then if he presents after that a ring that's worth $15,000, the customer sees that as much more reasonable and much more like a good deal in comparison to the anchor. So the customer is then more likely to buy the second ring than if he hadn't seen the anchor at first. You guys getting that? So that's called price anchoring. I'll give you another one, and maybe we'll come back to a couple more of these, but price decoying. So that is putting in a decoy that kind of accentuates the value of the other prices that you might be offering. So here's an example, and this is a real life example. The magazine, The Economist, offered 3 magazine offerings. Now, at first they only had 2, but then they slipped in a decoy, and the way that it changed the metrics was astonishing. So they offered a web offer. You can get The Economist on the web only for $59 a year. And then they had a web plus print offering. So you can get the web magazine and you can get the print magazine for $125 a year. Now, not surprisingly, their web sales were much, much greater. So 68% of people bought the web-only offer and 32% bought the web plus print. But then they threw in a decoy and they offered a third offer. So they still offered, you can get the magazine online for $59 a year. You can get the web and print version for $125 a year. But then they threw in a decoy right in the middle and they said print only. You can get the print only version for $125. And then when you looked at it, it's like, okay, the web magazine is $59 a year. I can get print only for $125 a year, or I can buy the web and print version for $125 a year. Now, it doesn't take a mathematician to recognize that print only is a terrible option to the point that it almost seems ridiculous to include it. However, The Economist included this option because it caused consumers to view the web and print options together much more favorably in comparison. So as a result, here's what happened when the print decoy was added in, it quadrupled the average sale. So then the numbers completely flipped and they were selling 84% web plus print. So that's called a pricing decoy. That's a price decoy. So these are some kind of fun metrics to play around with once you get these initial metrics that Zack is talking about. Once you know your lifetime value of your customer, your cost per acquisition, and some of the other metrics that he's going to share with us, those are some kind of fun things to play around with. And maybe if we have time, we'll share some more of those. So Zack, back to you.
Yeah, I love it.
Metrics.
I love it. Good little case study there. So that's a fun insight. And this stuff should be fun. Like we want to get the fundamentals down first, like Coach Tam's saying, like we've got to get the fundamentals down first. Like we got to have a good offer. We got to have a clear target market. We've got to get our messaging down and we got to get proof of concept. But then once we get those things, you should absolutely be tinkering with your pricing. You should absolutely be tinkering with your offers. You should be throwing in different bonuses, throwing in different structures. So we got to get the fundamentals down first and have offer funnel traffic and proof of concept and clarity and, get some momentum because we've got to have, a baseline to test against. But then, to do those different kinds of tests, that's what, is going to lead to dramatic increases because you only got to, hit one or two of those a year and you're just like naturally getting some really big lift out of what you were already doing at a baseline. So let's go a little deeper on the marketing metrics. I kind of started at the top with lifetime value and cost per acquisition. Let me kind of go down to the bottom, which is cost per lead. Cost per lead. This is one of the most common marketing metrics, and it's absolutely a good one. It's not as good as cost per acquisition and LTV. Like those are way more important. If you get those working, you're in business. If you get a good cost per lead, you may or may not be in business. It may or may not work out for you. But it's definitely something to track. And I want to give you kind of like the full stack from, bottom to top now is cost per lead. We want them to see like, what does it cost us to get a lead? Which is usually like a name and an email address or like a name and a phone number. Like, that they're on our list. That's what makes them a lead. Just the fact that they heard your message does not make them a lead, right? Just the fact that they saw your ad or saw you on stage, they're not a lead until they're on your list. So what does it cost to actually get them on your list? Cost per lead. And then for a lot of us who sell high ticket, we usually sell via a booked call or maybe even, through a live event or a webinar. But what does it cost to get them to take the next step? I'll just say booked call in this case, but it could easily be just attending a live event, attending a webinar, whatever your next step is, but we'll use booked call. So cost per lead, cost per booked call. Then we want to know what is our close rate. Once we've got them at the event, on the webinar, on the call, what is our close rate? And then from there, we're going to be able to just figure out what our cost per acquisition is, right? So let's just, use some round numbers. Let's say we spent $1,000 on an ads campaign. We offered a free ebook or a free mini course or a free webinar, whatever, right? And we got 100 leads on $1,000. We spent $1,000. We got 100 leads. That means our cost per lead was $10. And now we've got 100 leads, and we can kind of take it to the next level. Say that after they read your ebook, you're sending them emails, and you invite them to book a call. If you got a lot of value from the book, if you want to do these things, implement what you learned in the book. If you want extra help, if you want to go even faster, book a call and let's talk about working together. Now we can identify, hey, we spent $1,000 to get 100 leads. Out of those 100 leads, how many of them booked a call? Maybe we get 20 of them to book a call. Now we're looking at those 20 booked calls in that same $1,000 that we spent to get the 100 leads and 20 booked calls. So we spent $1,000, we got 100 leads, we got 20 booked calls. So those 20 booked calls that we spent $1,000 to get, that's $50 per booked call. And I want you to track with me. Again, if you're watching it on the recording, you can kind of pause it, write down the numbers. I'm just kind of doing it off the top of my head as we go. But we've got 20 booked calls. They were $50 each because that's what we spent on our ads campaign. Now the next level is looking at our close rate. Okay, we got 20 booked calls. How many of them did we close? Let's say our close rate's 25%. Out of 20 booked calls, we made 5 sales. And now to take it all the way to the stage that we started with, we've got our cost per acquisition. We got 5 sales on $1,000 in ad spend. What's our cost per acquisition? 5 sales divided by $1,000 in ad spend is $200 cost per acquisition. And if we know that client is worth, $2,000, $3,000 to us as an LTV, then we can say, okay, hey, we made 5 sales that are going to be ultimately worth $15,000, $10,000. And we can see that, hey, at a $10 cost per lead, I'm going to get a $50 cost per booked call. And that's going to turn into a $200 cost per acquisition, so we can start seeing our numbers and now we can start making decisions about, hey, what's a good cost per lead for me? What's a good cost per booked call for me? And we can start looking at our speaking events. We can start looking at our webinars or our ads campaigns, or even just, the money that we invest in producing social media content or YouTube videos. And we can start seeing like, okay, look, I'm spending $2,000 a month to have my content machine, or I'm spending $2,000 a month to speak on 4 stages, or I'm spending $2,000 a month to run ads. From that money that I'm investing, what's my cost per lead? what's my cost per booked call? What's my close rate? What's my cost per acquisition? And once you get those numbers figured out, then we can do what, you were talking about, Coach Tam, about like starting to kind of test different ad angles, different headlines, different pricing structures, different calls to action. But first, we kind of got to get that baseline. Before that, we've got to just get proof of concept, but then we've got to get a baseline and kind of measure where we're at of, if I invest this amount of money in my content, in my stages, in my ads, then I'm going to get X number of leads. And so, that's a really easy number to figure out. I spent $1,000 to speak on this stage. I got 100 leads. It was I got $10 cost per lead. Now, what's my cost per booked call? What's the cost to get them to take a next step? And then my close rate. And then I can now figure out my cost per acquisition. And we can start seeing like, hey, was it worth it to speak on that stage?
Yeah.
Was it worth it to run that ads campaign? Is it worth it to, publish a long form YouTube video once a month and have it professionally edited? Right. And we can start to see those numbers, and we see like, maybe one of them is hitting and the other two aren't. Unless you really track and measure your numbers, you're not going to know that like, hey, I should probably speak less and do more content, or vice versa. I should do less content and do more speaking because I'm getting a much better cost per acquisition from the stages I'm speaking on than the YouTube videos, or I'm getting a much better cost per acquisition from my ads campaigns than from the other two. So you've got to just start like, figuring out some of these baseline numbers of, hey, what's my cost per lead? Ultimately, what's my cost per acquisition going to be? The numbers in between are those cost per booked call and your close rate. And as you start figuring those out, one, it's going to give you a baseline of like, hey, do I have a healthy business here? Do I have a healthy marketing machine here? And then we can start tweaking it, and we can start improving it, and we can start making better decisions. So to me, that's those are the most fundamental, important marketing metrics that you can be tracking. And if you get a grip on those, you're going to be able to make a lot better decisions and help a lot more people and make a lot more money.
Yeah, for sure. And what I love about this too is it takes your decision making out of the realm of emotions, because a lot of people who are gifted communicators, they tend to lean into their feelings. Well, this felt like a good event, or this felt like a good campaign, or, but who cares what it feels like if the numbers don't back it up? The numbers are going to tell you whether that was a good event. And like Zack says, it's going to help you to make intelligent decisions about where to invest your time. So it's very, very important that you lean into this and you learn these things, because this is going to take you from a hobbyist, somebody who is kind of scribbling things on the back of a napkin, to a real entrepreneur who is able to scale your business. All right, Zack, you got more metrics for us?
I'm gonna cap it at those. If you can maybe re-listen to those, because if you can just kind of receive that information and start to think about it. And again, don't feel like you need to take every metric and get your dashboard out and start all your spreadsheets and your calculators. For now, just be thinking about, hey, what is my lifetime value? What is the client journey? And what does it average out to? It's not about like what if they bought everything, if every client bought everything. It's on average, what do they actually buy, over the course of 2-3 years? Figure out your lifetime value. So you know that every client, hey, it's not just $1,000 sale. They're actually a $2,500 client at the end of the day on average. And then figure out your cost per acquisition and start thinking about some of the other things. And ultimately, you may track all 5 of those metrics that we talked about in the marketing bucket today.
Excellent. Excellent. All right. So we're going to wrap up the podcast here. Is that what we're doing, Zachy?
Yeah. I'll give you the last word if you have anything else. Otherwise, we'll sign off for today.
Now, are we going to do a third part of, do you have more metrics that you're...
I do have more metrics. I do have more metrics. Tell us in the live chat, say next if we're ready for the next topic, or give me a 3 if we want part 3. I'm seeing some loving it. I see a next. I see 3. Maybe we'll come back.
I don't know if they know that next means we're done.
Yeah. We're moving to the next topic. Next is next topic.
Okay, so what we can do, I see a lot of part 3s. What we'll do is we'll plug in for those of you that your brain sockets are, smoking or something, we'll plug in another topic for our next podcast, but then we'll circle back. We will slyly circle back at some point to part 3. So we get all of Zachary's metrics. I can give you some more pricing strategies, and we'll do that because I see all a lot of the overwhelming response. They want part 3, Zack.
All right, we'll do part 3. We'll come back next week with something else, and then maybe the following week we'll jump back in. So we don't get overwhelmed by the numbers. We don't want paralysis by analysis. So,
Right.
We'll jump into something other than numbers next week, but then we'll circle back and plug in part 3 and wrap up a 3-parter. This might be our first 3-parter on metrics.
Nice. All right, you guys, thank you for joining us today for the Kingdom Builders Academy podcast, and we will see you again on our next exciting episode. Love you guys. Bye now.
Everyone.